We are part of what makes cities great, and we're part of what make people's lives awesome. We are a state full of creators and innovators and people who care. That singular event and all those scrappy folks who changed the way we thought about ourselves.
What are your top 3 books by Hoosier authors to give out this holiday season? From South Bend to Evansville and everywhere in between, this is Get In, the show focused on the Hoosier State and the incredible stories happening here today. I'm Nate Spengel, founder of Get Indiana, and I will be your host for today's conversation. What's going on today? We have an awesome interview with Keira Amstutz from Indiana Humanities. Now, I didn't know a ton about the humanities going into the conversation, but by the end, I am pumped up. Now, throughout the show, Keira shares a few ways that her team is impacting the lives of Hoosiers. You're going to learn about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for towns in Indiana with less than 10,000 people. You're going to hear her top 3 books by Hoosier authors to give out this holiday season, and a life hack to run your next book club for free. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. Let's get into it.
Nate, I am thrilled to be here today. Thanks so much for having me on as a guest.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Before the camera started rolling, we were talking about all the things we're going to get into, and we could literally take this conversation anywhere, from small towns and museum exhibits to arts, culture, like the whole 9 yards, and history. So, and I am a nerd for Hoosier history. So,
well, and I understand you're also a nerd for things like tenderloins and other things too. So we could go all over the place.
Literally anything Indiana, I'm a nerd for it.
Yep.
So I think just like a good way to set the tone, right? So people see Indiana Humanities, and it's kind of like, to me on the outside, it's a little fluffy. Like, what does this mean? What are humanities? Like, we talked about before, but like arts, humanities, they're similar but different. And so give us, the 1 to 2 minute overview of what you're doing at Indiana Humanities and what the humanities are just in general.
Oh, that's a big question, and it's a fun question. But I think rather than getting hung up on the humanities, we're going to talk for a second about sort of like how we started, because I think it's an interesting story. So Indiana Humanities was founded 52 years ago.
Oh boy.
And we are an organization dedicated to focusing on the public humanities. So those of you who maybe studied humanities in college, you may have a background in, and you mentioned before, like the fields of history and literature and civics and ethics and philosophy, all those kinds of things are sort of humanities fields. Our work is practical. We're in the public. So we are things you do every day. We are not something that is sort of a college subject. If you go to a museum, if you go to a library, if you read a book, if you go to a lecture, if you go to a festival and experience, Indiana culture, you're experiencing the humanities. If you go to a community conversation where you're talking about local government and democracy, we're kind of in a zone right now where people are thinking and really thinking about the civic life of our state. That's the humanities. So the humanities are everywhere. You just don't talk about it that way. So part of what I love about our work is we're in all 92 counties. We give out grants, we do programs, we tell stories, but we are really part of that essential cultural infrastructure of the state. We are part of what makes cities great, and we're part of what make people's lives awesome.
That's so broad that I love it. All 92 counties, all these different things. You're talking about reading a book to going to a museum, all the fun activities, the culture. I love that piece. Well, let's rewind. So you said 52 years old?
Yes, we're 52 years old. We had a big birthday a few years ago.
There we go. How long have you been with the org?
16 years.
Holy smoke. Okay, so you have to clearly love what you're doing if you're going to stick for something for 16 years.
Are you kidding? Absolutely. And if you would have asked, Keira in middle school in Hamilton, Indiana, if I would be running a humanities organization, I'd be like, what?
Hamilton, is that northwest-ish?
No. Northeast, Steuben County.
Oh, okay. Wrong side of the state. Steuben. Wait, is that how you pronounce it?
Oh, yes. If
I
you're
always
from
call
there.
it Steuben.
Well, that's because you're not
Steuben.
from there.
All right. Now I know my enunciation there. Okay. So 16 years with the org.
Correct.
A couple of things I want to talk about. First being, what brought you to Indiana Humanities, and why did you feel like this was the right role for you?
I had been working I'm a lawyer by training, and I had been working in local government. And one of the cool jobs I had at the city of Indianapolis, I worked for Mayor Bart Peterson at the time, was...
What were you doing for him?
I was chief counsel, director of policy, but I also had this really, really cool responsibility as part of my role at city government. And that was to support the Cultural Development Commission, which was something that the mayor had worked to create with community partners while he was in office.
The different CDC.
A different CDC.
I got you. All right.
Exactly. And the purpose of that, it was a public-private partnership, and the goal was to invest in the cultural infrastructure of the city. So Indy is known as a great sports town. It's an awesome sports town, but it's also a great cultural community. And so one of my jobs was to work with Visit Indy, Downtown Indy, the Arts Council, and lots of other community partners to elevate Indy as a cultural destination and to support that infrastructure and storytelling. And so I already had one toe in really working deeply in the cultural community and understanding how essential this work is to making Indiana a great place to live, a great place to attract talent, and a great place to grow.
And this is the thing I have with culture, right? Kind of maybe my beef is that it's so hard to quantify.
Yes.
It's kind of like you either know it or like you either have it or you don't, really.
That's exactly right.
And it's like how are organizations measuring? Like, mayor comes in and says, we need to invest in culture. It's like, how do you even determine whether that was successful or not?
Oh, I will give you a couple of examples. At the time, again, this was a huge partnership. So this was not the city doing this work alone. This was a deep, deep partnership with lots of players. The public art program started at that time. The cultural district program started at the time. And one of our commissioners of the Cultural Development Commission was a guy named Brian Payne, who came to us with an idea about a cultural trail. And so a lot of this work has all now, fast forward 20 years later, you can see how that investment in storytelling and culture has allowed us to grow as a convention city. It's allowed us to grow as a tourism city. It's allowed us to redefine ourselves in central Indiana in so many ways. And so that's one of the reasons why I was so passionate about going to Indiana Humanities when my time at the city was over. As much as I loved practicing law, I was also just astonished at it wasn't just these kinds of exciting cultural investments weren't just happening in Indiana or Indianapolis and central Indiana. They're everywhere. Because again, I'm from Steuben County. I have spent a lot of time working statewide, and I know that there's so many more stories to tell and so much more excitement and creativity going on. And I thought working with Indiana Humanities would be a way to continue that.
It does seem like we have a similar goal, right, of elevating these stories.
Absolutely,
wow.
see?
Wow, there's some chemistry here. When thinking about practically, let's take it from, we're here to increase the culture and the humanities in Indiana to on a practical level, where can we see the work you're doing out in our communities?
Okay, lots of ways. Quick example of something that happened a couple of weekends ago, working with a couple of incredible community partners, Mitchell Douglas and Chantel Massey. We put on the first ever Proof Literary Festival, which was attended by hundreds and hundreds of Hoosiers. It had writing workshops, had speaker panels. We had all kinds of space for independent bookstores to sell books because we are seeing a renaissance of independent bookstores right now.
Physical books are hot right now.
Physical books are hot. Writers are hot. And Indiana is a sizzling hot place for authors right now.
Okay, wait. Do you have a few of your favorite bookstores in Indianapolis?
Well, shout out to Tomorrow Books, who was a big part of the partnership, and Loudmouth Books, and also Dream Palace, who are all kind of neighbors and super close friends.
Are there any maybe boutique bookstores around the state that we need to check out?
Wild Geese Books in Franklin is amazing.
I'm so impressed. Seriously, you just named 4 bookstores. If someone would have put me on the spot and said, "What's your favorite bookstore?" I would have been like, "I don't know. I'm an audiobook guy, so I would have been Barnes and Noble."
But see, this is a great thing. You're going to see. We've got some information through our Indiana Authors Award program, which I hope we can talk about soon. That we've been profiling a lot of these local bookstores on our Indiana Authors Awards channel and on our Indiana Humanities channels, and they are doing terrific work. And what great anchors for communities. What a great place for people to come together.
Kind of like the original co-working spot, right?
Totally.
Where it's like you gotta I do think that's the one thing. Who was I talking to about? Someone from New York. They were talking about how in New York or in some of these bigger cities, Chicago, it's like you go to your corner coffee shop or bookstore and you just kind of hang out there because usually your physical space that you live in is very small.
Yes.
And you want to get out of there.
Correct.
And it's in Indiana, it's we have pretty big spaces. I have my living room and my whatever area, my den that I can read in and whatever. And so you don't really need to leave the house as much. Whereas in some of these more densely populated cities, bookstores are crucial. You think about this is totally pop culture, but the show Friends.
Yes.
Their living room is basically the coffee shop. And they're always hanging out there. And it's just these are anchors for communities between coffee shops and bookstores.
They are, and they're places where people collide, they're learning, they're welcome, they're places of belonging. I feel the same way about libraries. We do tons of work in libraries, and it's a great way for, again, community building. So you ask about, like, where else can you see our work? You can see our work in all kinds of places. So, for example, last night we had a team of folks I was mentioning to you when we were chatting beforehand that I was sad not to be able to go to the event up in South Bend last night because it would have been a great leaf peeking moment on the way there. But we had an event last night with 6 small short films made by Hoosier filmmakers that were screened in South Bend. We've been doing this film tour all around the state featuring films by Hoosier filmmakers about Indiana's natural places. And we have discussions with the filmmakers afterward. And again, really cool way to bring people together.
What are a few of the places they're highlighting?
Well, a couple of them are set in Gary. One is set in Bloomington, one's set in Evansville, and then there's another one that was set in Westville Correctional Facility. So,
that's up north, right?
Yeah, right.
Wow, okay.
So wide range of topics, but where you're going to see us is we have programs that feature authors. We have lots of film-based programs right now that we've been doing.
Well, let's just dive into it, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about take me through like a program from start to finish, how it works, how you guys then reach Hoosiers, and how you measure if it's successful or not.
Yeah, well, let's go back to the Proof Literary Festival because I think that's super tangible and something that maybe folks recently were able to experience. So the way that project came about, and again, we fund a lot of programs through our grants that we give money, we support folks, but they go off and do their own thing. This Proof event was something we actually deeply collaborated on. So the idea came from community ambassadors that we've been working in. 2 poets in the community came to us and said, you know what, Indy is so hot for literature right now. We've got these bookstores. There's so many writers that have books coming out, so much going on. How can we sort of capitalize on that momentum and pull something together that can really elevate that sector and really bring a cool event to Indiana?
Okay, so driven first by the community, they come and say, we want to host this event. This is what was it?
It was called Proof.
Proof. And it was a literature festival?
Literary festival.
A literary festival.
I know. Doesn't that sound fun?
It sounds like, for the right clientele. Like, I don't know if I'm like the literary festival aficionado, but but I understand how that would be super cool. Like, some people like music festivals, some people like film festivals, some people like, multi-day sporting events, the Olympics, whatever. Like, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Maybe not my cup of tea, but like, I understand how that's beneficial.
You might have really liked the open mic piece at the end, though.
Oh, okay. That would be cool. That'd be fun.
That was great.
Okay. So this festival started by the community. They come to you and you kind of partner together of like bringing it to life. Was it entirely funded by Indiana Humanities?
We scrapped and raised money and supported it, and absolutely with partners we put it together.
What were some of the big partners that you worked with to bring it to life?
Well, National Bank of Indianapolis was a great sponsor. Penrod supported it, and we worked with our friends at the Harrison Center for the Arts, who also helped support us. So it was a big tent, but we did put a lot of our own resources into doing it at the Harrison Center for the Arts, and also we had satellite opportunities at local bookstores in the neighborhood that I mentioned earlier.
Nice. Okay, so then hundreds of Hoosiers show up.
Yep.
Enjoy. How long was the entire festival?
It was a day.
One full, like 8 to 8?
You know it.
Heck yeah. Oh, I love that. People show up, they enjoy, they go through the different programming. Finishing off that, like, how did you determine whether it was successful or not?
Well, first of all, we surveyed the heck out of folks. This was the first time. We're experimental. So one of the reasons why I was excited to talk to you is you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and we are a very entrepreneurial nonprofit organization. We do not do the same thing year after year. We respond to the needs of the community, and we're always iterating. So we had a lot of questions about this. So we looked at things like not only attendance, but how satisfied were the authors who showed up? Did it matter to them? Did they sell books? How did the bookstores feel about the event? What was did this enhance visibility for the participants? What did it mean to them as creatives to be there? And what was it like for the audience? And we got rave reviews, and in fact, we're now trying to figure out how in the world, we can top it next year. So,
heck yeah. I love that. Well, you talk about, serving the needs of communities. Like, from a culture and humanities standpoint, what are the big challenges you feel like? I'm gonna go bigger than Indianapolis.
Right.
From a cultural and humanities standpoint, what are the big challenges Indiana's facing?
I am so glad you're bringing this up because I think, again, when you hear Indiana Humanities, you might not realize we are addressing some of the most essential challenges that our state is facing.
this is candid,
Yeah.
right? Like I was like, I don't really know. Like humanities, art, culture, like cool question mark. But like I'm intrigued now.
Absolutely. And so think about what the atmosphere is like right now, especially post-COVID. What are some things that we're thinking about a lot as a community? Isolation? Absolutely. We're thinking about the needs of lifelong learners. So, right, folks need to be able to grow and live a full life. And this is a big deal.
I think that's like a level of adulthood where you like kind of like a level of maturity where you realize you're kind of like, I've learned everything there is to learn. And you're like, no.
Oh, no.
Like, and it's like when you stop learning, then you kind of like plateau, I feel like, in a lot of aspects of life. Like I'm like so dedicated to like 1+ book a month. Like I'm an audiobook guy, so don't get me too much. But like I listen to at least one book a month, and like I'm learning about something, and then it's so fun to like take whatever I'm learning like for the month. Even like right now I'm reading a book called Living with a SEAL. It's a Jesse Itzler book, and he lives with David Goggins for a month, and David Goggins is like a Navy SEAL jack dude, puts him through this workout. And it's like I love going to like talking like in places like this, like just sharing what you're learning. It's like you might be reading something totally different on the other end of the spectrum, but it's like talking about the thing that you're learning is fun. And that's how I know I'm getting old.
But that's also part of the joy of learning something new, sharing ideas, connecting across something like that. And that's an equalizer, right? So when you can bring people together around, let's say, a local history project or talking about a book, you break down all kinds of other barriers and you can get to know somebody quickly. You can help build a connection. And it's sort of it's an accelerator. It's a relationship accelerator. And I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, I think that like right now, at least from my perspective, things that are really hot that are bringing people together, it's like run clubs, book clubs. And a lot of times you see this in like faith-based organizations, right? Where churches have a small group or something like that. But it's like you show up to a new city, say you're not a runner. It's like having this thing to go find your people, your tribe. Like that's super important.
It is super important. It's also important to like find your place when you get to, like thinking about how do you feel like you belong in your community? Are you seeing like experiences and people and ways to connect that feel right to you? These are some of the ways the humanities can play a role. You mentioned book clubs. We actually have a really cool free program for book clubs. So can I do a little advertisement?
Oh, God. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so
tell me about this book club in Indiana.
Okay, well, here it is. So let's say you start your own book club and you're like, yeah, I've got this book club and I've got a group of people that are getting together. We have a free lending library for book clubs. We send you sets of books. Some are audio. So again, you're an audiobook guy. This is a thing for you. We have some large type. Let's say it's a senior group and they need, some accommodations with the visuals. We send you these kits of books for free. You read them and you send them back. There you go.
Just a set of books.
Yeah.
I mean, and like, is
all
there
over
like,
the state?
Could be any type of book.
We have a huge library in our basement of kits of books.
What are the kits and what's the number of people?
I think there's like maybe each kit has at least 20.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, our book club has like 8 people in it.
That's okay. But we might have some books that you might get excited about and we would lend them to you.
So
and
you have a book club kit where you will for free ship people kits of books for your next book club.
There you go. That's an advertisement.
How do we learn about it?
You go.
It's not even an advertisement. That's just like a useful tip. Like you're wanting to start a book club. Here you go.
Here you go. And we have awesome people who run the program.
Yeah.
If you send them an email and you're like, hey, I think we want to read something like this. Do you have any recommendations?
Huge thank you to our friends at Greek's Pizzeria. Since 1968, Greek's has been serving up delicious pies all over Indiana, from Fort Wayne to Crawfordsville down to Bloomington and everywhere in between. Greek's Pizzeria is all over the state. You need to go check out the video I posted of Mike Cole. Now, Mike owns the Greeks in Zionsville. He ran the Mill Race Marathon in Columbus and broke the world record for fastest marathon while holding a pizza. It was a spectacle. It was super awesome. The man crushed it. He ran a 3-hour and 15-minute marathon while holding a pizza. That's faster than I run my normal marathon. It was an insane feat to witness. Give yourself a break from making dinner tonight. Pull out your phone, go to GreeksPizzeria.com and find the store nearest you. Order a large pepperoni. You're going to be a hero for your significant other, your kids, whoever they are. They're going to love you. There's a reason they've been in business for 55 years. They know what they're doing when it comes to pizza. Go check out GreeksPizzeria.com. So wait, how does someone get plugged in?
So you go to IndianaHumanities.org. The program is called Novel Conversations. There's a form you fill out. You say, I want this. There's a list of all the books. You say, I want this book. I want it for these dates. And we correspond back and we send them to you. You get them through the Interlibrary Loan Program. So you go to your closest public library, grab the kit and take it and have your book club.
Heck yeah. I love it. So free book clubs in Indiana.
There you go. Free
I
book
love
clubs.
that.
It's one of our oldest programs. And again, something that is,
But
pretty cool.
There's so many things like this that are just like ultimate life hacks. Right. So let's think. We just did a book. We read River of Doubt by like the Theodore Roosevelt, exploring the Amazon. And everyone had to go buy it, right? It was $14.99 for me to buy it on Audible. It was other people, $9.99 used Amazon paperback. We had 8 people do it. I think that's like $90 at least, $100 to make this book club come to life. And it could very well be actually. Well, I can't look it up right now, but I might want to. Okay, wait, where do I go again? Indiana Humanities?
IndianaHumanities.org.
IndianaHumanities.org.
And then the program's called Novel Conversations.
So Novel Conversations. Let's just see. Could we have saved $100 by doing a novel conversation? I mean, The River of Doubt's kind of a popular book. Let's see.
I don't know. We have all kinds of books. But this is a great way to create access. So again, a big part of our programming is we want to make the humanities accessible for anyone. So whether you can afford a book or not, obviously you've got a local library who may be able to help you as an individual, but for book clubs, they often don't have large sets of books.
Oh my gosh, there's a million books on here.
There's a million books on there. Okay.
Not on here.
All right. Well, we didn't have that one, but we might have another one.
But there's some, like I just saw an Abraham Lincoln book and I was like, because we were doing like a presidential one, we could have easily picked one of those. This is awesome. Holy smokes. I love it.
Well, you were asking a little bit more about like questions or reasons that, ways we're addressing issues facing Indiana. So we talked about lifelong learning. We talked about isolation, which I think is a big one. We also help people connect across difference. We have a lot of conversation programs where we bring people together around, we have this one that we love. We just did a couple of weeks ago. It's called Chew on This. And it's essentially a statewide dinner party that's scheduled. It's around a topic. So this one was What's on Our Plate. And it was about Indiana agriculture and food. And it was really cool. And so we grab restaurants around the state, it's all happening at the same time on the same night, but the same conversation. And we have a facilitator and you show up at the restaurant with your friends or with people you don't know. So it's sort of a dining with strangers, which is kind of awesome.
Those are hot right now too.
Yes, totally hot right now. And you sit down and you have a facilitated conversation over a meal, which again, great way to break down barriers and get to know people and get connected is over food. And one of the things we always do with those programs is we have someone there who's taking notes, not saying Nate said this or Keira said that, but capturing some of the essence of the conversation. And then when it's over, we share kind of the collective statewide wisdom that was gleaned from this statewide dinner party.
It would be interesting to see how different the conversations go in different places.
It's crazy. One of the last ones, I was down in Evansville at our conversation, and it was, it kind of depends on who shows up and what their interests are, but it can go in a wide variety of spaces. There's actually a fun story. So these are, again, those collisions. So one of the things I think we also help address is helping connect people because in the industry that you've been in, a big part of it is what's your network? Mm-hmm. How do you build a network? How do you build trust? How do you get to know people? And these kind of events bring people together and build real relationships. So you probably know Mike Langelier.
I do know Mike.
Okay, if you asked Mike how he made his way to Tech Point, he will tell you a story about a Chew on This. We did a Chew on This program, this Dining with Strangers program, around the topic that we did was around the Pan Am Games.
I just had Milt Thompson on yesterday.
Love it.
To talk about the Pan Am Games. This is crazy.
Okay,
all right.
So there you go, connection.
1987.
So the connection and Pan Am Games is actually one of the reasons I'm in Indianapolis too, so that's another side story. But we had the topic, we had all these leaders from the Pan Am Games as our facilitators in restaurants all around the city. Mike went to the one that Mark Miles hosted, and they made a connection, and I think ultimately he can tell you the rest of the story, but I think the rest is history, because they didn't know each other then.
Wow. Look at that. 2 Indianapolis business leader greats met at a Chew on This talking about the Pan Am Games.
You know it.
I think that's a piece that I hope to encourage people is like a lot of amazing things happen when you just show up.
Oh, showing up.
Find something cool that's semi-interesting. Like I'm interested in history, and I love sitting down with Milt. He was the general counsel for the Pan American Games in 1987. He talked about flying down and meeting with Fidel Castro.
Oh, yes.
It's crazy.
Epic.
It's wild.
But doesn't that change the way you think about like Indy and its trajectory? Like hearing that story about how that singular event and all those scrappy folks who said, yes, we can totally do this. It changed the way we thought about ourselves.
Well, when you think about topics that you guys are thinking for Chew on This, right? So Indiana agriculture, like I think that just like food Like the United States food system is just questionable a little bit. And I think there's a lot of people, especially with Robert F. Kennedy and like things like that, like bringing to light, like what are we really eating? But what are these other topics that you feel like people are discussing around the state, whether it's at Chew on This or at different events and things you see?
Oh gosh, so many things. But one of my other favorite topics that we did was who belongs here. It was a fascinating conversation because it brought together a lot of, I think, newcomers to our state, people who were new to communities who wanted to be part of the conversation, and people who were also looking at ways that their communities could be more welcoming and could be, places that aren't just great places for folks who, like my family had been in the same town for 5 generations, but for folks who were coming in new. So that was a really great topic. But, again, kind of back to some of the bigger issues we're tackling, because I think you're leading into that. We often work in themes because, explaining the humanities took me way too long earlier. So we just speak through our work and speak and support our partners. So the last few years, the theme that we've been really investing in is an environmental theme. We call the program Unearthed. And it has been, a series of programs from hikes and cave. We have this program called Campfires, and your listeners may be really interested in this. And it's a seasonal program. We've just wrapped it up, but stay tuned. There's going to be some awesome opportunities next season.
Stay tuned next season.
Yes, stay tuned next season. But we take people on hikes and canoe trips and, again, through caves and all kinds of natural places in Indiana. And while we're out there, we read little pieces of either poetry or literature or even things that are written about that place from people long ago to really help connect us with the landscape that we're seeing, the place, why it's special, and also getting to know people along the trail. So you get there, you have a facilitator, you walk a really cool either, again, canoe, hike, whatever you're up to, and then at the end we sit around a campfire, have a beer, and talk about what we learned and talked about environmental stewardship. So, again, those are some ways that we've explored the environmental theme, but the other themes we've explored in the past are food. We did a huge program called Food for Thought that won our highest award nationally. That was pretty cool.
Are you guys a chapter of a national organization?
No, we get support from the National Endowment for the Humanities, which is a federal agency, but that's just a fraction of the funding we receive because the rest of it I raise. And the
You're just
team
out
raises.
and about?
We're out hustling like any other nonprofit. Okay.
Because I've had a few nonprofit leaders on there, and it's like, man, if I could write unlimited money to unlimited nonprofits, yes, I would send it all. I feel like people usually find a few nonprofits of like orgs that they really resonate with or that speak to them, and they, yes, that's where they send most of their money. When I think of something like so broad as humanities, how do you resonate with your, donor base? Mm-hmm. And how would I know where it's like, because I think humanities, I'm like, I'm not interested in humanities. But now if we've talked about it, I'm like, oh, wait, yeah, I am interested in this. And like ways that my listeners might be interested or like already dipping their toe in or already like fully submerged in humanities, but like don't even know it. So I'd like to talk about both of those. Like what is the current donor base like? What, mm-hmm, are they interested in? What type of people? Mm-hmm. And then talk about like where people might be interested in humanities when they not even know.
Here in the heart of Indiana, something unique is growing. For generations, sports have not just captivated us. They've ignited ideas and fueled global innovation. And today, we are writing the next chapter on the future of sports, where technology is unlocking new insights on every play, to the training ground where tomorrow's champions are leveraging advanced analytics to refine their competitive edge. In Indiana, we know that winners and losers are separated by just inches. Now, we are pushing the limits of performance to new heights, mastering the smallest details that define success. The brightest minds are here, pushing the world's best athletes forward and driving innovation with unrivaled resources. At Sports Tech HQ, we're turning what if into what's next.
Okay, first questions first. Donor base. It's vast, broad, and often tied to maybe a particular thing we do. So you might be a super, passionate history person, and that is the part of our work that really resonates with you when we are able to support programs helping local communities tell their history or helping, kind of uncover that or bringing history programs to communities. But you also might be really interested in a topic or a program. Often it's programmatically based. So if it's a corporation, they're usually pretty geeky about a program. So like Proof, the literary festival, easier sell for a corporation. They can send people to it. They can put their logo on stuff. They can do things. Individual donors often just have been touched by our programs in a particular way. They attended something that changed their life. They, have a particular passion for the work. And so they support, because this is something that's meant something to them. Philanthropy, they understand sort of the role we play in the ecosystem. Without our grants, without our team out there supporting, telling stories, making connections with these organizations, a lot of the organizations we work with are small. These are scrappy, small, local organizations that really don't have sometimes a lot of other options for grants than the ones that we offer. And we are sometimes a great conduit for them to help them grow and prosper. So foundations like to work with us because we work at the intersection of so many worlds, and we view ourselves as in service to that community. So we are here for them. This isn't about us. In fact, most of the work that we do is really in support of and through other organizations.
Well, okay, so what does the grant process look like, and what type of grants are you giving out?
We give out a wide variety of grants. So one of the most popular grants is turns around every month. It's called a Humanities Action Grant. So let's say you're in a community and you want to create an exhibit, you want to bring in a speaker, you want to do something, you can call us. We'll talk you through the process. You write up a short online application, and we'll let you know in a month if your program is successful. It needs to have a couple things. One, it has to be a public audience program. So this has to be something not just for you and your buddies, but for the community at large. And it has to have some kind of humanities discipline at its core. So you have to have some kind of humanities content, obviously. So
interesting. All right. Let's do a hypothetical here.
Okay.
So let's say there was this local podcaster, and he wanted to do, let's say over the course of the next year, 2025,
Yep.
he wanted to pick 6 individual, maybe cities around Indiana, let's say Muncie, for instance, right?
Okay.
And wants to do something along the lines of like, what's the history of the Ball family? Everything in Delaware County is based around the Ball family.
You betcha.
Ball jars, Ball State, Ball Hospital, like everything's Ball. Who are they? What did they do? And I'm like super intrigued by this, but I haven't found the right partner that's like, man, someone needs, because obviously there's a thousand things I could be doing. I'm really interested in the history side of things in the state. Is that like a program that like would work with you all?
I think it would, absolutely. So what we could do is, if you came up with a plan, and again, I don't make the decisions. It's a competitive grant, so
absolutely.
Nate, I don't have a magic wand.
I'm not saying it's me. I'm just saying there's a podcaster that might be interested in the history of Indiana.
Well, there are, and I think those are the kind of things that we could totally support. So it can be any kind of format. So this is why I love podcasting, right? So many people are finding, all kinds of areas of interest online and through this. So absolutely.
What are some of the other grants you've seen, or some of the most creative, maybe, or unique or memorable?
One of the programs a few years ago that I think really kind of changed the organizations that collaborated on it. Do you know there's a steam museum up in Northwest Indiana?
No.
It's called the Heston Steam Museum. And so the Cedar Lake Historical Association and the Heston Steam Museum came together as collaborators. And they had this old steamboat that they wanted to revive, and they needed some resources to pull together some collaborative programming so they could take people out in this old steamboat on Cedar Lake and tell the history of Cedar Lake. And it was a super cool collaboration. It's an amazing looking vessel. So if you get online and you look at this cool steamboat. And what happened was it was open to the public. And so all throughout the summer, folks in the community could get on this steamboat and go and learn about the history of their town. Many of them didn't know the history of their town. There were a couple of stories that we heard of people who lived in that town who had never been on the lake. And this was a way, I think, for the Steam Museum, for the Historical Society to learn how to more deeply collaborate. And because of that, they got hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional grants, and they've now been repeating that program every summer. And it's been a great point of pride for that community, and it's something they can really build on, continue to help celebrate their community.
And now it looks like trains. Like they have they're all in the locomotive engines. That's pretty slick.
They do.
Okay, the Heston Steam Museum.
Yeah, so
that's a good
pretty
hidden
cool.
gem.
Absolutely.
Okay, and it starts to make sense. Like you're putting this like broad topic and you're making it make sense to me in ways. Is the biggest way that you're impacting the state through grants?
I would say there are 3 things.
Yep.
Grants, programs, again, sometimes we initiate, sometimes we work in collaboration, and then storytelling. Because we've got a team right now that's just doing amazing creative storytelling work through all of our social channels. So for those folks listening who are interested in, Indiana culture, and all the cool things that we're involved in, follow us. IndianaHumanities.org. Indiana Authors Awards is our other channel. We are the home of the Indiana Authors Awards, which is a really, really cool honor. Every other year, we have 8 books there are 9 categories, and so it's a book award. So there are 9 books that win every other year, and we have 2 kind of specialty awards, and we do a lot to uplift the shortlisters and also the winners, and it's just a cool platform for people who want to follow along with Indiana writers.
What's the program that touches the most Hoosiers, the most are involved in?
Probably our grant program.
The grant program?
Yeah, we probably are able to connect a lot of the dots. Also, actually, that Novel Conversations program, we hit a lot of dots on the map because of that, because we got a lot of readers. But I would say definitely the grants program.
I think that seems like an easy way where it's just like if you just got one book club per county, and you think of 10 people, it's like all of a sudden 920 people have been affected by or been impacted by the work you're doing.
You bet.
I love that. I want to go back to one of the questions that I worded super poorly, right? About
you did great.
Yeah, well, you're great, right? So when you're thinking about how the humanities touches everyone, I don't think every day I wake up like, oh, can't wait to, talk about the humanities today. And before this conversation, I was like, if you would have asked me, walking down the streets, are you interested in humanities? I would have said no. Mm-hmm. And it's just because I don't really understand. Well, I didn't understand. Now I'm like, oh, all of these things that make you human and the, history and culture and yada, yada, yada. Talk to the listeners, tie some loose ends together of ways the humanities are impacting Hoosiers every single day.
So I think a little bit about just even listening to your podcast and the things that you talk about and the way you're kind of weaving stories together and the way you're kind of celebrating local culture. So anytime you're interacting again with local history, let's say you're taking a beautiful walk, you're going to Brown County and you're seeing the leaves and you're walking down the street and you take a moment to read a historical plaque and you learn a little bit more about the building that's there. That could be a regular thing that happens in your everyday life where you're encountering the humanities, right?
In the last, we've been going for 40 minutes. In the last 40 minutes, I've realized that I love the humanities. I love reading those plaques.
You are 100%. The problem is the word. We've got crappy branding. I mean, I think the word humanities, because it just does not resonate with people.
Seems very Shakespearean,
Yes, it does, but it is so not. It is just the essence of, I sometimes hear people say the humanities are the things humans make and the things that make us human. Mm. These are all you have a deep conversation with someone where you're having that conversation with your book club members, or you're telling somebody about a thing that you learned or a person you met or an idea. These are all about the human experience, and that's really what the humanities are. It's a study of the human experience.
Wow.
We're all hurtling through the galaxy on this rock, and this is about who we are, why we're here, what we're doing together, and how we can make our world better. It's everything, right? It's everything.
I'm sold. I love it.
It's just not tight. I got to work on the elevator speech.
Well, I think that's just a branding because it just seems like it is an old style word, right?
It is.
The humanities, I study the humanities.
Kind of a cool word too, but it's all right. We just need to make it cool again.
Yeah, got to make humanities cool again. I love it. Okay, well, let's just talk about as we bounce around the state and think through. You have some couple interesting initiatives coming up.
Yes.
Talk about how we can get plugged in. Well, actually, I want to brief pause. Besides, obviously, fundraising, end of the year, tax prep, all that fun stuff. If you have some money that you want to send towards the humanities, we're always game for that. What are other ways that individuals can get plugged into what y'all are doing?
Okay, so I've got a couple of things, and I'm going to make sure I don't leave anything out. First of all, if you live in a town, can I do a quick backtrack?
Absolutely.
So we were talking a little bit earlier that Indiana Humanities often works in themes because, again, our work is so wide-ranging. It's really awesome when we can focus in on a theme or a topic for a period of time and really go deep. The theme we're going to be going deep on coming up is really civics and democracy.
Okay.
So if that's something that you're thinking, okay, well, this is interesting.
Wait. Let's make civics and democracy young. Talk about how do we make that sound more interesting and not that it's not interesting, but younger audience. Civics and democracy seems probably not for me. Like, give me a little bit of an explanation there.
To me, it's about community life, being engaged in community life. Your listeners are active, engaged people. They're listening to you because they want to know what's going on and how to connect. If you're doing that, you're definitely engaged in the civic life of the community. It doesn't necessarily mean voting. It means volunteering. It means connecting. It means knowing what's going on.
Being a good citizen.
Paying attention. Absolutely.
Like being an active community member. Okay, so like I believe, so first you're like civics and democracy. I'm like, probably not for me. And then I'm like, oh, wait, as we like dive into this, similar with humanities, it's like, oh, that is me.
It
like,
is you.
Yeah, but if you're invested in your community and you want it to be a better place.
That's it. That's it. I mean, we're all
okay.
living in this community.
So,
how do we make it better, and how do we work together to make it better? Because that's a democratic process.
Yeah. So the theme coming up is civics and democracy.
Well, we're going to call it something other than that. But the reason I'm raising it and just sort of putting a note in it is we actually have an opportunity that's coming up for communities fewer than 10,000 people. So,
oh boy.
Okay. So if you live in a town that's smaller than 10,000 people and you want to host a Smithsonian exhibit. So we have a partnership with the Smithsonian Museum out of Washington, D.C. This is a big brand name. This is a sexy brand name. If you want to bring a cool exhibit to your community, there's an opportunity to apply right now. And the exhibit's called Voices and Votes, and it will also, as part of hosting it, you're going to have to create your own local component that tells your own local story of how citizens come together in your community to do good things. And these are very well done exhibits, and it is a unique opportunity for your community to get a ton of resources and really shine. So,
wow. So a community under 10,000 people
Yep.
that wants to bring the Smithsonian exhibit to their community as well as tell their story.
Exactly. It's a really neat opportunity. And again, for those small town folks out there, we'll demystify the process, call us up, and we'll help you through the application. It's pretty simple, but we've hosted some of these Smithsonian exhibits before. We did a recent one on waterways. The exhibit was about waterways, and we went to all these cool towns in Indiana that have great connections to water and water places and helped them tell their stories. And it was amazing. One of my favorite pieces, we were in Terre Haute, and I didn't realize that the river, the Wabash River there, they used to harvest shells to make buttons, and there was a big button factory there. So like the community just learned all kinds of cool things about its waterways, how they've worked, how we've neglected them, how we're now bringing them back. And again, these are the ways that I think sometimes learning about your past can help you chart a better future.
Quick pause in the action to tell you about my friends from Hard Truth. This is my favorite bourbon in the state of Indiana. I was down at the distillery in Nashville. It is a place you have to check out. This holiday season, if you're looking for a getaway, go down there, get a spot at the cabin, hang out at the restaurant, the distillery, go on all the tours. It is an amazing time. As you're thinking about holiday gifting, go pick up a bottle of Hard Truth at the nearest liquor store and give that to the special someone in your life. It is a gift that you definitely won't forget. There's plenty of recipes and fun stuff that you can make with their bourbon as well. I love what they have. They have some amazing collabs with people like Mellencamp Whiskey Co. Hard Truth has been an amazing partner of mine. They were at the World Mixology Championship. They were the bourbon of choice there. Their journey over the past few years has been incredible to watch. I'm a huge fan of Hard Truth, and they've been a great supporter to us. Make sure you go check out Hard Truth. Now let's get back into it. If you had to pick the ultimate community to host this Smithsonian exhibit, that's all about democracy, right?
Yeah, it's going to be about civic participation, civic engagement, and getting off your butts and making your communities better. So yeah.
So if you had to pick a city in Indiana to host it, who would you pick?
Oh my gosh, I cannot. You cannot make me do that, because here's the thing: we've got folks out there who are applying, and I don't want them to think I've got my thumb on the scale. But what we look for in the communities that want to host this is, what are they going to do besides the exhibit, right? It's about, how do you build like all kinds of extra programs and bring people together, and who are your collaborators, and how is this going to make, how is this going to sort of set your community on a trajectory to do other things?
Based strictly on name, I'm saying we're going to Union County, and Liberty, Indiana is hosting
Holy cow.
The Smithsonian
You better
exhibit.
be calling those folks in Liberty right now, because that is so on brand.
If you live in Liberty, Indiana, you need to apply for this.
Yes, you do.
I love it. Okay.
Okay, so that's
that's one big program. What else do you have coming up?
Okay, so the Indiana Authors Awards, one of the cool things that we do after people are chosen, the authors are chosen, the books are chosen, is we have essentially a speaker program and a writing workshop program. So if you want to host one of those Indiana Authors Awards winners, you can apply to us, and we can then send those. We pay the authors to come to your place and connect with your community. So sometimes those are schools who apply, sometimes it's libraries, sometimes it's mayors, who want to bring. I brought a copy for you today of one of the books that was recently awarded the Indiana Authors Award. It's a book called Vanished Indianapolis by Ed Fujawa. Speaking of a great follow on social, follow Ed Fujawa.
Is he Twitter?
He's on Twitter and he's on Instagram, and he may be on. I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know. I'm sure
I
he's
think
probably.
I think
on
he's
there
the one
too.
that posts like all these old pictures of like stuff that's no longer there.
He is genius, and it's something I thought might be up your alley. So I brought you a gift.
How do you
but if
spell
you
his
want
name?
Fujawa. But if you want Ed to come to your community and give a talk about Vanished Indianapolis, you can apply to the speakers program. We have writing workshops. We also have obviously grants all the time. And if you are a teacher and you're listening to this, and we just have so many tributary programs that are small, but I'm going to give a shout out to our Poetry Out Loud program for teens. It is a poetry recitation contest, and we actually had the national award winner from Columbus, Indiana 2 years ago who won the National Poetry Out Loud competition. We are looking for teachers in schools who want to host that. And I understand you hang out at schools, so maybe you need to tell those folks at Chittard that they need to be part of the Poetry Out Loud program.
Poetry Out Loud, baby. Let's go.
Let's go.
I love that. What else we got?
We also, I'm thinking if you are getting ready to start putting together your holiday shopping list, you should be definitely putting those Indiana Authors Awards shortlisters and winners on your list. And we still, and then fairly soon, I think in the next couple of weeks, we'll be posting online all of the films that I was mentioning earlier, the short films about Indiana's environment that will be online that you can stream, and you can host watch parties in your own community to do that. So.
I love it.
Yeah, so
Those
if you want to
are
support
some
Hoosier
great
filmmakers,
ways.
that's a cool thing to do.
Okay, so I mean, holidays right around the corner. What are your top 3 books by Hoosier authors to give out this holiday season?
So we just talked about Ed's book. I think that's a win. Another really hot book from our Indiana Authors Awards list is by Tess Gunty, who's from South Bend, Indiana. It's called Rabbit Hutch. Great work of fiction, really help you understand kind of the gritty history of South Bend and that area through the eyes of a young woman from that community. You can always go historic. There's just tons of Indiana writers that you can go back in the Wayback Machine if you want to give somebody a Vonnegut or whatnot. But if you go on our website, one of the things I love the most is that when you start to scour the short list, you can find something for everybody. So there you go.
I love that. We've come to some fun segments that I have as we kind of get towards the end of the show.
Okay.
I like to ask some fun questions, just kind of like we talk about what's going on around Indiana. And so I have a couple unique ones for you, just based around what, my take on humanities and fun things like that. So first question that we're going to dive into is, we kind of just mentioned it for Indiana, but just more broad. What's a book that you think everyone should read at least once?
I love science fiction. I remember getting off the bookmobile because my community was too small to have a library.
The bookmobile? Yeah. Wait, can you describe? I don't know what a bookmobile is. Okay. It's like the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile?
It's almost that cool. Yeah. So again, I'm from a town of less than 2,000, and I grew up in what we call a library desert. They're just, we didn't have access to a public library in my community, but there was an old school bus that was retrofitted with all kinds of books, and they would come puttering around during the summer, and you could check out books from the bookmobile. And that was one of the great windows to the world for me as a small town kid, and I loved every minute of it. And the book that I read over and over and over again was A Wrinkle in Time. And I've reread it over the course of my life, and I think they're like old friends, So it's like, I hope you all find a book like that you can revisit, that can help you dream, that can help you think about people and relationships, but also something you can come back to. So
I love this. And you're talking about like these rural communities. Someone who's been crushing it when it comes to like helping bring literacy to rural communities is Dolly Parton.
Oh God, she has been killing
her
it.
Imagination Library.
I
think it just opened in Indiana,
about it.
Right?
I'm
pretty sure.
It's happening, and I'm not sure if we're at all. So here's the scoop. So Nate, if every county in Indiana gets if they sign up and they do all the things that they're supposed to do, allegedly then Dolly comes to your state.
Really?
And so I know some people who are working on it, and they're working really hard to make sure that every state has opted into the Imagination Library, so Dolly will come.
Wow. Okay, wait. We got to look through. I'm looking through like 46504. That's Bourbon, Indiana for anyone. Marshall County. Mm-hmm. Oh, it is. So it's not available in Marion County. No Imagination Library in Marion County, but Dolly Parton's Imagination Library is available in Northern Indiana. which is sweet.
It's in many of the counties. The state library runs that program, so I'm not sure exactly the stats, but it's super important.
That's so awesome. And she's just crushing it. Like,
Totally.
Kudos to Dolly for making that accessible to all these rural communities. I mean, I grew up in a town of 1,200 people, right?
Yeah.
So I know what you're talking. We did have a library,
Yeah.
thank goodness. And I always remember we had like the book fair and all stuff like that where they let you pick out a book. And I was like, who wants a book? And now I'm like, I wish I could pick out a book.
I know.
Sometimes
you
it'd be like that.
stickers and you got pizza and you got all the stuff.
Or
It's
like
good.
when Pizza Hut did Book It.
Oh, Book It is the thing. I've worked with a lot of people that, like, I'm a tiny bit too old for Book It, but dang, I would have cleaned up on that pizza.
Oh yeah, every once a quarter, it was like you could get a free pizza. And what they do, the ultimate move by Pizza Hut, like they give you this like tiny little pizza, and like mom and dad got to split a $24 like whatever. It's like they knew what they were doing, but like the kids are gonna beg to go there. Okay, as we continue down, what's your favorite Indiana landmark?
It's somewhat lacking in imagination, but I do think the fact that our city here in Indianapolis is centered around a piece of public art is pretty dang cool. So I would say, let's look at
The Sailors and Soldiers
the Soldiers
Monument.
and Sailors Monument.
Soldiers and Sailors. Oh.
Yeah, there we go. We get it.
All right, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's not great.
I mean, it's awesome, right? It's like it's
It is
iconic.
awesome.
When you
And
think of Indianapolis, it's iconic.
It is iconic.
Like, I remember the first time I like drove down, like when I was like old enough to like kind of understand it, I just like saw it. I was like, whoa. That's pretty sick. And in the summer when like all the stuff is going, like it's fire. What's a humanities topic that you could talk about all day long? Books?
Yeah, literature.
Literature. I love that. I mean, I do think that as I've gotten older, I love books. I love podcasts as well. Like I think podcasts and audiobooks are like my two, you know, those are kind of like my source of entertainment mostly. And I just think they are, I don't know, I love them. I'm a big fan now. Subtle plug, I'm a podcast. Now, of course, I like podcasts. And if you could only recommend one museum in Indiana, what would it be?
I'm a big fan of the Eiteljorg, and I think what they've recently done with their like main galleries is just extraordinary, and I think it's unique, and I think it tells some incredible stories of Indigenous people here and all over. So I would say I'm Team Eiteljorg.
I think the Eiteljorg is the largest collection of Native American artifacts west of the Mississippi or east of the Mississippi.
East of the Mississippi. There you go.
East of the Mississippi.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is
we
exactly
had
right.
Jake Oakman from White River State Park on, and he talked about the Eiteljorg. It's awesome. Super
It is.
cool
It's
stuff.
a treasure. And, they not only have the great museum, but they have so many other great cultural events. Again, things we've supported through grants and other pieces. They've got their Indian market and lots of other things. So go check it out if you haven't been there.
Heck yeah. All right, so we've come to our younger years segment. So this question is brought to you by our friends at Orr Fellowship. They're a great organization here in Indiana helping develop young business leaders across the state. Keira, what advice would you give to your 22-year-old self?
I would tell 22-year-old Keira to do a couple of things. One, quit worrying about everything. The things that I think I worried about and I obsessed about at that age were things that probably a week later I wasn't even thinking about. So,
Isn't it funny how it works like that?
It really is. So I think those are the kind of things that I would say. Another thing is I remember I had some really unique early career opportunities to do some extraordinary things. And I was a first-gen college student, and I think there was just a certain amount of like how the world works that I just didn't get. Like asking, I worked with a bunch of really amazing people in my first job, but then when I was getting ready to get in, apply for clerkships when I was in law school, I didn't even reach out to those people that I'd worked with in the previous job that I'd done great work for, but I didn't want to bother them. And I was like, oh, I want to get this on my own and I'm not going to leverage my network. And I realize now, the world's about relationships, and I spend a ton of my time now, and I have for years. If I speak to a group or I go out and I'm connecting with people, I give them my card and I really mean it. I'm like, let's sit down, let's talk. I love to get to know people. I love to get to know their stories. And I wish Keira at 22 would have understood that this relationship building and supporting each other is, kind of the DNA, I think, of Indianapolis. And I just missed that memo.
Yeah, I think there is, and you're from a small community. I do think from my experience, it's like that wasn't super common. I grew up in a blue collar family, and it wasn't super common where it was like networking, right? It was like dad went to work and worked in the factory and then came home, and that was just life. And so you get down here, and I remember saying, I think I wrote my freshman year of college, it was like, I want to work in small business. I didn't even know what startups were or entrepreneurship.
Sure,
I just knew I wanted to work in small business is what I called it. And then it's like you get to Indianapolis, and now you start to see all these different careers that don't exist or maybe weren't as visible in rural northern Indiana. right? Where it's like, oh, now you get here and you're like, oh, I can like ask a friend or ask a mentor, this open the door for whatever the thing is. So I love that. I think that is spectacular advice.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask for that advice because people are excited to give. They're excited to be part of your story and part of your journey. And I just didn't get that.
I mean, like, and I always say, like, think about it as Christmas. Like, again, I keep saying this, like, the theme of the episode is as I get older. But as I get older, it's like, I'm all like, I want to give gifts. Like, it's like I can get stuff and it's like, I don't really care. I don't really want it. But like, I feel so good inside when I get to like give the gift to someone and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And that's how people feel, as long as you don't overuse it.
Right.
That's how people feel about their network, their connections, their relationship, right? Where it's, if they make an intro, like, I mean, I've seen people make an intro for me and then they come on the podcast and they're like, they feel so good because they got, an awesome guest for Nate. And I'm like, yes, you guys crushed it. Like, thank you so much for making that happen. Yeah. And so I think that your network is a lot. If you don't overuse it, when you go and actually ask someone and they're able to like come through and help you out with a thing, it's awesome. Really you're giving them the ability to help. Like you're giving them the ability to be a good civic leader.
You bet.
All right, so now we have our final 3 questions. These are always the same. We ask every guest that comes through here. What's something the world needs to know about Indiana?
We are a place of great creativity and innovation. I think it is one of the probably stories that's not told enough. I mean, I think people think of us as a sports state or an ag state or a life sciences or, they may not realize that we are a state full of creators and innovators and people who care. And I love that.
I love that. That's a great one. What's your favorite piece of Indiana history? What's the best story you've read? One
of the things we did a few years ago that was super cool is for the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. Because, think about it. Women have only had the right to vote for 100 years, a little over 100 years.
That's wild.
We have so much we could talk about there. But we supported a bunch of, learning and research and then programs into these amazing Hoosier women who fought for the right to vote, who were national leaders in the right to vote, and their stories had been lost. So I think those are the kinds of things that get me up in the morning and get me excited. There are so many, amazing people who have done things in the past whose stories have not been told, and that's a big part of what we do at Indiana Humanities. We're part of those untold stories.
I love that. Here it is, your moment to shine. What is a hidden gem in Indiana?
Small town is where I'm going to go here because I am betting that in the history of this podcast, this has probably not been listed. My hometown has a really important historic gem that is alive today, alive and well. So do you like to dance?
I love to dance.
Okay. We have a dance hall in our town called Cold Springs Resort. And it was built in about 1919, I think. And it was for a few years, maybe a bowling alley in its early days, but then it turned into a rocking dance hall. And it is still basically what it looked like in 1920. It has these windows that flip open that overlook the lake. So the town that I grew up on is on a big lake. And so this Cold Springs Resort Dance Hall is one of the coolest places to go hear live music and dance in the state of Indiana. And if you're extra cool, you find somebody who can drive you over to the dance on the boat. And then you go get a basket at the old hotel. You can get frog legs, chicken, fish, one of those baskets, and then you go whoop it up at the Cold Springs Dance Hall. My parents fell in love there. My daughter got married there last year.
Oh, no way.
And I'm telling you, it's a place.
This place looks sweet. The Cold Springs Resort Hotel. Or the Cold Springs Resort in Hamilton, Indiana.
Hamilton, Indiana.
Wow. No one has ever said this, but I love it already. I'm just looking through it and
it's
I'm like,
incredible.
Oh my gosh, so cool.
And so in the past, they had a lot of big acts that would go through there. Again, for a small town, that was a big source of pride. It's like Beach Boys, Sonny and Cher, there's some big acts there. But it's continuously operated since then, which is kind of awesome.
It looks like a great spot to host an event. Maybe we get north and host something up in Hamilton. Wow, so cool.
You just let me know. I'll hook you up.
That is a spectacular hidden gem. That's a true hidden gem.
It is true.
I can't wait to
I don't want it to be hidden anymore, but I will say they bring a crowd, and the dance floor is that perfect wooden, squeaky, awesome. You can dance all night and your feet don't hurt.
Heck yeah, I love it. Okay, final question of the day. Who's a Hoosier that we need to keep on our radar? Someone who's doing big things.
I'm going to throw out, since we talked a lot about writers, I'm going to say you need to all brush up on the cool writers and people who are doing amazing things. So Leah Johnson is has a new book coming out, Black Girl Power, and she is also the owner of Loudmouth Books, the bookstore we talked about earlier. So go hang out, see Leah, see what she's doing. She's a national talent, and she's right here, and she opened a bookstore in Indianapolis to try to make her community better, to try to build community through books and reading, and she is hot author and awesome and super committed to the community. Another fun writer that he does get a lot of ink, but he deserves every bit of it, is Maurice Broadus. Maurice is actually a librarian by day and a middle school teacher at the Oaks Academy, but he's also, many of his books have just gotten picked up as potential films. And his most recent Indiana Authors War, he writes a lot of middle grade work, so it's kids books. And he is incredible, and what a great ambassador for the city. So you should know Maurice.
Heck yeah. I love that. I think that's in my future, is writing a children's book about
think you
Indiana.
should.
I think that'd be fun.
It would be really
If there's
fun.
any illustrators out there that want to illustrate a book about an Indiana children's book, I'm in. Let's put that out.
Okay.
right.
I think there's going to be somebody listening.
Somebody.
Because I'll tell you this, with children's books, illustration's a big part of it. So you
Yes.
got to have a good collaborator.
It's like, I'm just going to put together like a fun story about, a Hoosier that, floats down the Wabash and then eats a pork tenderloin sandwich and makes it to the end. And, it would be great. But then we need to get some great illustrations.
I think that's good. But here's my question. So you were obsessed with the tenderloin.
Yes.
Do you know Chef Neil Brown, who's another
No.
great Hoosier? Neil has said on multiple occasions, I believe, that the state sandwich should really be the BLT. And so I just wanted to know what you think about that. BLT versus tenderloin. Do you think it's even in the same league?
No, to me, no, not at all.
Why is the tenderloin so precious to you?
Because it's so unique. Like BLTs, I guess I feel that those are everywhere. Like I don't know, are BLTs not like around the?
I don't know. I'm just saying he says this, and so I'm just curious what your thoughts
I
are.
think that if you ask any random person in Texas and you're like, have you ever had a BLT? They'll probably say yes. It's like, have you ever had a pork tenderloin?
And
like a breaded pork tenderloin. Like people in Oklahoma, I was just talking to someone, they were out there. I was literally approached at the Fort Wayne Water Conference. I was up at the Indiana Rural Water Fall Conference, and they said, this lady comes up and says, I hear you're the tenderloin guy. And I'm like, I don't know if I want that. But all right, I guess I am. Yeah, I'm the tenderloin guy. And she says, where do you think the best tenderloin in Indiana is? And I'm like you on this one. I can't pick one. There's so many good ones. But I always say the biggest. The biggest that I've ever seen is in Edinburgh Diner down.
that's a beast.
It's massive. It's huge. So people are like, it's too thin. It's too whatever. It's huge. But as she talked about, she's from Kansas, has been to Nebraska, all through Illinois, Missouri, and she tries tenderloins. It's her thing. I was like, maybe you're the tenderloin guy,
Yeah.
And then she goes, but I was out in Oklahoma and I asked them about a pork tenderloin and they said they'd never heard of it. And I was like, so I think that what makes the pork tenderloin uniquely Indiana is like if you ask someone in Oklahoma, where's the best BLT? They're going to say, who cares about the BLT? But I know what it is. If you don't even know what the sandwich is, like that's something unique to have.
I think you've convinced me.
All right, there we go. So Neil Brown.
Yeah, Neil, he every once in a while he throws something out on social where he's like thinking it could be it should be more of a thing because we're so good with tomatoes. We've got a lot of pigs. I don't know. Maybe that was his angle.
That's fair. Well, if people want to get plugged into Indiana Humanities and the work that you're doing, where can they find you? How can they support? Here's your little, you have the mic. Tell us how to get plugged in.
Excellent. Well, please follow us on social because we work statewide and because we do such a wide variety of things, as you've just learned. The best way to keep up with us is on social. We have a monthly newsletter, so if you want to sign up for that, you can do so on our website. We're active on Twitter. We're active on X. We're active on Threads.
We still call it Twitter.
Okay, good.
Here.
I can't get that through my head. Instagram, Facebook, all the regulars. We also are always looking for volunteers and friends and collaborators. So if anything that I've said has sparked an interest, or if there's any way we can help and support you, because I think I mentioned earlier, and I truly, this is the DNA of our organization. We are a service organization. We are about lifting all of you up who are doing this cool work in your communities. So if you think there's a way that we could help and partner and support you, reach out, and we're happy to help.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. And I'm already excited for our next month of book club.
Sounds great.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Get In. If you liked what you heard, make sure you leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. This show is made possible by our friends up at Sweetwater. Whether you're trying to start your own podcast or looking to take your show to the next level, make sure you check out sweetwater.com for all your creator needs. If you want exclusive behind-the-scenes content on all things Indiana, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Nate Spangle. Thank you for being part of what makes the Hoosier State so amazing. We'll see you next week here on Get In.